Welcome, everyone. I'm James Mancini and one of the founders of Netreo. And today we're going to be talking about some of the best ways to integrate your Netreo management platform into your ServiceNow environment. All of the attendees are muted. So if you think of any questions during the presentation, please make sure to enter them into the questions section of the GoToWebinar interface, and we'll be sure to get them answered for you. So there's a number of ways in which we can integrate our management platform with a product like ServiceNow. Which ones you implement are going to depend on how your organization uses ServiceNow and how deeply your IT department has embraced the ITIL model for technology. So some of the more common integration opportunities we see customers using are incident creation and management. This is typically referred to as trouble or service ticketing, but there's a lot more to it as well. Bidirectional integration is also important. So having two-way communication between the platforms offers some great opportunities to streamline workflows. You should also strongly consider CMDB integration so you can automate the provisioning of new devices or nodes into your management platform just by using your existing configuration and asset management processes. And finally, I'll share a few best practice lessons we've gleaned from having implemented our platform in some of the largest and most complex networks in the world over the last 20 years. But first, let's just quickly review the ITSM model since ServiceNow is structured around it. So Netreo can play a key role in building out a successful full scope ITSM implementation, and many of the things that our platform can do to help are obvious, but some are less so. So if we look at the functional areas of the ITIL model, it divides the areas of management into five main functions. They are fault, capacity, accounting, performance, and security. And this portion of the model is sometimes called FCAPS by its acronym for these different sections. Our platform kind of touches on all of these areas to some extent, but it's going to have the biggest impacts in fault, capacity, and performance areas. So let's look at a few other practices ITIL defines and how we integrated each of those points. Of course, the area we most directly impact is usually operations. So ITIL breaks this into several related processes, and the first and probably the most obvious process we impact here is event management. So this includes fault detection, monitoring production services and resources, or even testing applications the same way that users access them. It includes notifications, which should include opening incidents directly in ServiceNow, but it can also include sending direct notifications, things like SMS, email, push notifications, etc. It can even include automated remediation of problems using what we call active response. And this can be things like restarting services or rebooting servers to try and restore service more quickly. Some of the other operations processes that we affect are things like problem management, which ITIL defines as finding the root cause of problems for faster resolution. Now, we do this in several ways, including correlating related outages and detecting topology failures automatically. There's also incident management, which is defined by ITIL with a focus on the forensic aspects of making sure an incident doesn't reoccur. And our platform provides deep forensic data, including 3 years of history, and that depth of recorded historical data can help find incident precursors, which can then be instrumented and acted on. One of the first major integration points with ServiceNow that many of our customers take advantage of is incident creation. So you can configure our platform to create those incidents either manually or automatically. So we can either do it manually with a single click by having an operator or engineer click a create ticket button in the user interface, or you can fully automate the process and let us do it automatically on our own. Either way, this basically moves Netreo incidents into ServiceNow directly via their API. So you can customize the priority, category, subcategory, and all the other ServiceNow incident parameters that we'll use when creating that incident so that you can control and simplify your event routing once that incident is created. You can also have our platform acknowledge the incident automatically when a ticket is created. So the idea is when we acknowledge an incident on our platform, it color codes it so your NOC and engineers know it's being worked on, and it'll notify anybody who got directly alerted as well so they know that the problem is being handled. Just to illustrate that concept, when we detect a problem with a monitored system or application, in addition to sending out direct notifications, or taking other kinds of actions like automated remediation, we can automatically inform ServiceNow and generate an incident. And when that happens, we get the ServiceNow incident ID for the created incident and we insert it into our web interface as well, along with a specific link that will take an operator directly to that incident page in ServiceNow. So that way, an operator who's using our tool can quickly jump directly to ServiceNow to see what the incident is there or add additional notes in that platform. And now you've got true two-way integration between the platforms. And of course, we'll continue to update ServiceNow with the status as things change, so you can automatically close those incidents once a problem is resolved if you want to do that. Now, another important function in ITIL is called service transition. And service transition is responsible for deploying applications and migrating them into the production environment. So as a result of this, they also manage the change process to make sure that the production environment stays stable. Now, our platform has a lot of services to offer the service transition team, including things like configuration change detection and the ability to enforce configuration policies. So let's look at that in a little more depth. Change management gives us a rich set of integration opportunities with ServiceNow. So the first and most important is probably integrate our platform into your ServiceNow CMDB. And simply by providing us with a set of credentials, the platform can automatically detect when new devices are provisioned in the CMDB and add them into our monitoring. So you can start collecting performance-related metrics. You can start notifying people when there's a problem. You can start doing application-related monitoring. The way that we do that is using a set of what we call auto configuration rules. So that auto configuration rules will drive templates based on configured parameters about the device, like what its name is, where it's located, what type of device it is. And those templates in turn drive all of the alerting configuration, who to notify, when to notify them, what services we might want to monitor, what thresholds and parameters and performance metrics we want to watch and who to notify if those have a problem. All of that is driven automatically. So that saves a lot of time and trouble, especially in very large or very dynamic environments. You can also have ServiceNow automatically schedule maintenance windows in conjunction with your change approval process, and this will help eliminate false alarms and wasted troubleshooting efforts. Also, our configuration management tool allows you to detect any device change and send out notifications so you can make sure that there's no unapproved changes going on. You can also see a complete log of what changed and when, and use that functionality to enforce configuration policies so you can get alerted if a particular configuration line matches or doesn't match for any of the different devices that are being monitored. We also build in a logged SSH gateway, so you can centralize all the interaction with the CLI devices through our platform and keep an accurate record of who made what change and when, which will improve operational security as well as giving you an audit trail for stability. Now, the ITIL model also defines a practice called service level management. And it defines that as the processes that are involved in ensuring that the required IT services are delivered when and where they're supposed to be. So this will also necessarily include working very closely with availability management, capacity management, incident management, and problem management to ensure that the required levels and quality of service are achieved, and as always, within the resources provided or allocated by the financial department. So this drives the need for the service level manager to get very deep into reporting. So having easy self-service reporting tools and the ability to easily schedule those reports is going to reduce the burden on other teams to create the reports for them. The next major ITIL area, capacity management, includes several related things. So while some of the resource management here is obvious, like bandwidth and network capacity, this discipline is also going to include things like workload management and performance management. So that might include user experience monitoring, response time monitoring, things like that. This team is also responsible for other types of resource management. So this includes things like tools, staffing, and even possibly training for the technical teams. Now, our platform provides a wealth of information for the capacity management folks. Obviously, things like bandwidth, trending, things like server and cluster resource usage, and because we maintain a large amount of historical data, it makes it an especially valuable resource for long-term trend analysis and planning. However, the platform has even more to offer here. Things like monitoring application response times, sudden changes in traffic usage, so we can monitor your NetFlow or IPFix data to see actually the real connections across the network and what protocols are in use for a given site or a given segment, and then alert when unusual behavior is detected in that traffic pattern. So if you have a remote site suddenly jumps from 25% web utilization on average to now 80% web utilization, I can get alerted on that and go and figure out what's going on. And oh yeah, okay, it's the NBA finals and I've got 26 people trying to stream it simultaneously. I can deal with that, but I can get notified about the behavioral change, which is very important for the capacity team and may also be important for things like the security team. We can even provide things like measurements of staff and process effectiveness. So like time to response, time to resolve, time to acknowledge incidents can all be reported on as well. Now, an important success factor in capacity and service level management is to make sure that the teams are getting the data that they need in an easy to understand format and on a consistent basis. So the best way to do that is to automate the reporting. But in order for that to be successful, it needs to be very simple to do. So our approach is to make it so that anything you can view in the web interface, you can turn into an automated report with just a couple of clicks. So the reports have a much better chance of getting done if they're super easy to create, even without any special training or SQL or scripting knowledge, and without having to use external reporting tools like Crystal reports that are generally just a pain. This then allows you to use reports instead of creating incidents in some cases. So for example, if I'm getting an alert when the hard drive reaches 90% utilization, that's great and everything, but I might be opening incidents frequently and it can cause a firefighting mentality on the team where they're just running around from one incident to another without a lot of time to really solve fundamental problems or advance the business forward. So what if instead, every morning, they just got a list of devices with the lowest free drive space? Then, if they deal with the first few entries on that list every day, they get to sleep through the night. So this makes for a much more proactive approach to the problem. Instead of just waiting for a crisis to fix, we can actually start getting ahead of these kinds of problems and heading them off before they really become an issue at all. Now, I'd like to share just a few best practices that we've gathered from working with some very large and complex environments that can have a direct bearing on how successful your overall monitoring implementation is going to be. So one of the best practices you can adopt is to centralize all of your monitoring. This not only reduces admin and training overhead and maintenance spend as well, but it also offers three big advantages. First, the command center is able to quickly determine whether a problem in one area is affecting other areas. So if a server goes down and several applications suddenly go red at the same time, the command center staff are going to know which support teams to notify. And a team that's just monitoring its own area may not be aware of the nature of the failure and might waste valuable time trying to diagnose a problem that isn't really theirs. The second big advantage is transparency. So teams that are being watched by others tend to run better and with fewer problems, because when something breaks, they tend to find a permanent solution so that the same issue doesn't recur. And if everyone is sharing a single source of truth, there's less time wasted finger pointing, and this reduces the time it takes to repair, which is going to reduce your costs. The third is standardization. So this means having a consistent, repeatable methodology for what should be getting monitored, how to do it, and making sure that it's applied consistently and correctly across all your devices and applications, even as the environment is constantly changing and growing. So our approach is to use those templates and auto configuration rules that I talked about to allow you to fully automate best practice monitoring, so nothing ever gets missed and you're not dependent on manual checklists to get things into monitoring. This allows you to find new devices as they come online and add all the monitoring with the settings predefined so we don't have to worry about those manual processes at all, and we can make sure that nothing ever gets missed. You should also try to avoid letting individual teams use standalone products if there's any alternative, because this creates what we call an information silo. So they may have great information, but nobody outside the team has that same information. And this can create substantial delays in troubleshooting and incident resolution. Multiple tools will add to the training burden and can lead to a lot of finger pointing, such as, well, your tool shows the application isn't responding, but our tool says it's fine. And this slows down the overall recovery effort and ultimately costs you money in the form of wasted engineering time, extended recovery time, and repeated failures. Also, make sure that every alert the monitoring platform generates, it needs to create an incident and get acted upon. So if an alert isn't going to create a response, you should eliminate it and instead use those scheduled and automated reports to maintain visibility to the situation without disrupting the team. Because if you're getting too many alerts, pretty soon your engineers are just going to start tuning them out, or they're going to create filters that send them off to a mailbox that they don't have to look at, and they're just going to ignore them. And that can actually be worse than not having monitoring, because you're still depending on the users to tell you when there's an actual problem. So if you're getting too many alerts, We build in tools like the template baseline report and incident history logs, so you can identify the sources of those excessive alerts and correct them. So the incidents are only triggered when there's something actionable to do, and then that can flow smoothly into our incident management process, create the tickets in ServiceNow, and make things go really smoothly for the team. You should also try to automate the initial response to alerts as much as possible. Doing things like restarting services or rebooting servers, or even just logging into the system to dump diagnostic information when a problem is detected, can help to reduce manual interventions and can go a long way towards speeding up recovery times, especially with things that are occurring only sporadically. Now, ignoring alerts is a sure way of getting into trouble. So at some point, a mistake is going to be made and someone will ignore the wrong alert. And this leads to what we call dashboard measles. So the screens are completely covered in red spots. So a monitoring screen that's flooded with alerts makes it very easy to miss a new critical alert that's actually meaningful. And alerts need to be acted upon and acknowledged or corrected as soon as possible to prevent this. So we like to say it's not acceptable to just let alerts sit in the queue until the support team's regular working hours. If the condition is acceptable during off hours, the alert should only be generated when it is not acceptable and when someone is available to work the problem. You can largely avoid this problem altogether by making sure non-actionable alerts are not even seen, like we talked about before. And you can always report on, what you're monitoring after the fact to find adverse or unusual conditions to investigate them proactively if it's not something that you're going to respond to right away. So, for example, if my CPU suddenly spikes on a particular server, if that's just an information point and I'm not actually going to stop what I'm doing and go look at that or deal with that problem, that's not an actionable alert. I should be getting that in the form of a report on a schedule rather than getting interrupted in the middle of my workday with that message that I'm not going to do anything about. We also say don't get monitoring tunnel vision. So you need to monitor from where the users are located. Our approach is to allow you to integrate your own private remote data collectors either on-site or in the cloud so you can monitor things from where the users are located. I can see from my remote sites if I'm able to reach the servers that those users need and what the response time for those applications are. And you can also leverage our network of remote reflector systems that we maintain in data centers around the world to monitor public facing sites from various locations, even if your Netreo appliance is on premise. And possibly the most important thing is not to let support teams do their own monitoring exclusively. So it's okay and probably a good idea if a team wants to have a view of what the command center is seeing, but it is not okay to let them perform monitoring instead of the command center, because departments and teams that perform their own monitoring with no oversight tend to hide their dirty laundry, and they also tend to apply temporary fixes. So as a result, you'll have more outages, longer outage times, and a higher percentage of recurring outages. And because there's no oversight, senior management is often unaware of the number or scope of those outages. It's also worth talking a little about handling your notifications, because in this model, you could really choose to send alerts directly from our platform. You can send them from ServiceNow, a combination of those, or even using a notification management service like OpsGenie or PagerDuty. So we strongly recommend centralizing the alerts if possible. And the reason for this is because duplicate alerts and conflicting status coming from different tools can confuse the engineers working on the problem or even lead them down the wrong paths and delay resolution. It can also provide a single point of acknowledgement and a single truth that everyone can work from. So it also helps to give the teams a single place to look for status so that they share that truth between all of the different teams, which can help establish trust between the teams as well as assist in creating transparency within the organization. Now, we should also think about exactly how we're going to get these notifications to the teams, especially factoring the difficulties that are inherent in any kind of a mass outage. So during a crisis, I need to be able to reliably communicate what is going on to all the teams and stakeholders. Now, email and SMS are usually the foundation that most notifications are based on, but those may be impacted during a crisis or saturated with alerts and notification or just unavailable. So minimizing that noise is an important step. Um, we also want to consider alternative notifications. So think about things like mobile app push. So the path that these communications take is entirely separate from email, and these can even be initiated from the cloud side, so the state of your internal networks or systems won't affect it. But we need to use those sparingly as it can be very intrusive. We can also look at using integration into team communication platforms like Slack, Teams, Bittrex, or others to make sure that all the members of the team are aware of what's being done when and by whom. One nice side effect of using these kinds of platforms is it creates a log of communications after the incident to make the post-mortem easier and to help with root cause analysis. So we can actually see exactly what happened when, who communicated what when, and you've got a perfect log of that that everyone can share and see and search. So it makes it a really useful resource in, over the long term. Now, I'd like to take just a few seconds to talk about who we are. For those of you who haven't worked with us before, Netreo is approaching the end of our 20th year in business, and we've been profitable since year one with a proven track record in both public and private enterprise and a customer retention rate of 98%. We've won a number of key industry awards that have validated our approach over the years, including winning Monitoring Product of the Year award from Network Computing UK 4 years running. And we've also won awards for ease of use and customer support. And this year was actually our third consecutive year on the Inc. list of fastest growing companies. So now I'd like to take just a minute to answer any questions that you have. So please enter them into the GoToWebinar interface if you have not done that already. I'm also going to launch a poll now. So if you'd like us to follow up with you with additional information or to discuss your specific environment, you can let us know that way and we'll get in touch with you privately. So the first question is, what does the licensing model look like? Okay, so we try to take a very simple approach to licensing. So what we've done is our licensing model is based on the number of logical systems you're monitoring. So basically it's a device count of virtual and hardware devices. And then for each device, you get all the features. So process monitoring, performance stats, storage monitoring, log monitoring, flow monitoring, all of that and more for all of those devices at one fixed price. So our intention here is that this eliminates a lot of issues that we've heard about from our customers with some of our competitors' products where they get priced out of features that they need or they get nickeled and dimed to death trying to figure out all of the different monitoring options that they want to build in and trying to get all of that into a single platform or a single view. Okay, looks like that's all the questions we got today. So thank you for joining us. Hope you found today's presentation useful. And if always you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact us at info@netreo.com and we'll be sure to get right back to you. So have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thanks very much for your time.